again, Michael Ware with the Iowa Firearms Coalition. We're bringing you Warrior Wednesday. Today we have Matthew Thomas. This is going to be a wild ride, and it's going to be a very worthwhile. I've sensed this. That it's going to be a very worthwhile interview. In the interest of keeping everything very genuine. None of this is scripted, of course. I haven't spoken with Matthew other than a quick email to see if he'd be willing to visit with us. So everything you're going to hear is going to be very organic, and we're most likely going to chase some rabbits, metaphorical and otherwise. Before we do that, always go to iowafc.org. We want you to especially drop in our trusted partner page. Yes, we want your membership and your contributions. We need that. It's the only way that this works. But visit our trusted partners, because their collaborations with us, supporting the people that support you, are how this thing continues forward. They make the Warrior Wednesday possible, and their contribution to you as members is a big deal. So if you're interested in discounts on things to offset the cost of your membership, iowafc.org, and check out our trusted partner. So now that we have that well in hand, Matthew Thomas, why don't you offer us a little bit about yourself, and we'll begin the discussion. Please go ahead.
All right, sounds good. Great to join you first off, Michael, and hello to everybody out there in listening land and watching land. And so Matt Thomas, I am an Arizona native. I was born and raised here, and grew up in the Phoenix area initially, and then moved out to a little small farming town as I finished out high school. And then at the ripe old age of 20, I joined the local sheriff's office here, which is the Pinal County Sheriff's Office. And that was in 1993. And I did 32 years with the sheriff's office, finishing at the rank of chief deputy, which is equivalent to undersheriff, so second in command to the sheriff at that time, which was the very popular and famous Mark Lamb. He was the sheriff that I was serving when I was in that position, and retired from there May 17th of this year, and took a chief of police job at the town that holds our county seat, actually. So people ask me, like, oh, how much further of a drive is it? It's not. I take a right instead of a left now. So I took the chief job at that PD on May 19th. So I took the weekend off and then jumped right into it. And I have been there since. And throughout my career, I was a SWAT team member for 18 years, and started off as a regular SWAT guy. I was a team leader for a number of years, and then ended up as commander of the team. And I was in command of the team for about 5 or 6 years prior to Mark taking office and promoting me up to chief deputy. And so I held the rank of, I was a detention officer. That's where I started, in the jail, moved out to the road, and was a deputy sheriff. I was a sergeant for about 10 years and promoted to lieutenant. I was a lieutenant for 6 years, and then chief deputy for 8 years, just over 8 years, and finished there and jumped over to Florence as the chief. And yeah, that's it. I also, throughout my career, I've done quite a bit, and I think we'll get into all of that. I've done a bunch of different assignments, undercover work, motors, undercover again, as a sergeant, again, the SWAT team, anti-smuggling, and all of that led to the writing of a book. And so I wrote a book on some of our cartel operations that we did, and published that in 2022. And I think that is about it. I'm married, most importantly, to a wonderful wife who she's put up with that 32 years. And I have 3 beautiful children and 2 grandchildren.
Wow. Fantastic. You know, I'm really tickled to hear you mention your spouse. I did a let's see. I did a recording. I think it was for last week's Warrior Wednesday when I was visiting with a gentleman, and basically I hadn't planned on this. You know how these podcasts are; they're almost always unscripted. And I just told him, I said, you know, I really appreciate your work. But oh, by the way, can you do me a favor and let people know that I think you're your spouse or your significant other? Because really, when I was checking, I don't know, you may have run in some of these circles, but are you familiar with John Tigan?
Uh-huh.
Okay, all right. I was visiting with him, and if I remember right, that was on the recording. And I just told him, I said, thanks, man. I really appreciate it, because when you leave here to go there, you have to have supports in order to keep the ball bouncing. You have to have all these things in place. It's not just your spouse. It's not just your family, lots of things. So When you're doing your work, as you know, Matthew Thomas, you have good support at home, or these things are exponentially harder. So kudos to
Yeah,
you,
absolutely.
your wife. I mean, it's uh, our other halves are elevating us at any given moment, whether we realize it or not. And the more that I do this with people, I recognize when they recognize it, and often if they don't, tough things happen as a result. So kudos.
Yeah,
I'm
for
really
sure.
glad you start that way.
Well, hey man, I'll tell you that as a young cop, you don't always see it, you don't always know it, and you don't realize what the glue is holding everything together. But I think as you gain tenure, as you gain age, as you gain wisdom, if you can hold it together, hold the family together, because this is a tough career to do that. And when you get to the backside of that, you have a clear understanding of that. Quite often, you were the cause of problems, and quite often the spouse was the one that kept it all together. And I can tell you, especially during my undercover stuff, that's a stressful thing for any relationship, because you're living a double life, and
Mm.
it looks like you're living a double life at home, because you are. And so working through that, and then having to have certain plans in place in case we're out as a family and I get recognized, and then I can't have a family because that's not part of my role. So all the stuff that goes along with this crazy career, and then just the normal patrol stuff, putting on a vest and your gun every day, and going out and doing your thing, and you really don't have the understanding of the stress that it causes them at home while you go do that.
I had a brush with that a few times. And it wasn't any, the first one obviously wasn't something, or for me, wasn't anything that I had considered. It wasn't anything I had mentally prepared for. And full disclosure, I own a custom gun shop. And so I'm the boss, you can do your own thing, whatever else. And since we cater a lot to law enforcement agency work, whatever else, when we can, there are a ton of officers that come through here in official capacities and for personal reasons. And you meet UC guys. It doesn't matter whether they're operating on a federal level or state, county, local, whatever it may be. You run into them. And I was at a big social setting, and I ran into an ATF agent who actually was a good friend of mine as well, or is a good friend now. At that time, he was just a friend, right? And I ran into him, and he kind of gave me the look, and so I grabbed my wife, and we left the restaurant, or this social, eating and drinking, or whatever you want to call it. And she's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Well," I said, "I ran into a guy that does the law enforcement work undercover," and I said, "I got the immediate sense that he didn't want me to engage him." I said, "I don't know if that means that I had not to be there, but I knew that I can't walk up and say, 'Hey, show me your badge, buddy.'" It's not something like that. So I said, number one, maybe we don't want to be here. Number two, I don't want anything to jeopardize any work that he's doing. So I said, let's find someplace else to spend a little bit of time while we're in the city, and then we'll head home, because we live out in the boonies. And
Yep.
so, and she took that in stride, and it was fine. And so, but I had never considered what might happen, Matthew, when I ran into somebody that does that kind of work for a living. And as you know, maybe some of these guys come through here, and I see them once a month or once a year for a few years in a road cop capacity. And then I see them 5 years later. Well, they've transitioned into UC work or something else. So I always now, I don't know if people can consider it this way, but when I run into somebody that's in law enforcement, or I have known to be in law enforcement, I always let them approach me after we make
Right.
eye contact, because I don't want to mess something up for them.
Right.
And life's like that, and it's inadvertent. And especially in a place like Iowa, I don't know if your section of the Southwest United States is like this, but it isn't a high population where I live. And so paths do cross. You kind of got to be careful. So
Right.
have you had experiences like that when you were doing UC work?
Not on the friend side of things. On the work side of things, yes, I've had my wife and my oldest daughter and I were walking into a store, and I immediately recognized one of the guys I was dealing with uh, undercover stuff with, and again, we had a plan for that, and so she knew what the plan was. She knew what the signals were, And so as soon as, I mean, we literally walked in the door together in a store, and I look up and I see one of my bad guys, and he doesn't see me yet. He's not paying attention to the door. But as soon as I see him, the plan goes into action. My wife knows what to do. She takes the kids, and actually, it was both my daughters. She takes the kids off and goes to a different spot, and the kids are like, "Where's Daddy going?" She's like, "That don't worry about that. Let's just go." Right. So she shuffles them off, and kind of our ultimate plan was we would have a rally point, and
Yeah.
I would call her and let her know where that was. And so I broke off and went through the store by myself in case he had seen me. I wanted to look like I was totally alone. And so, yeah, you have all these things, that you have to plan as a family that seem normal to me because it's your life and you're living it. But then the funny thing is when you talk to your kids after they become adults and they have a true understanding of how weird childhood was, and some of the stuff we had to do, and some of why do we celebrate Christmas on 2 days before Christmas, or the shifting of the holidays,
Mhm.
shifting of times for get-togethers, all that stuff becomes normal in our world, or is normal in our world, and it causes I just probably just stress on the family, right? Because kids, especially, they just don't understand it. Wives have to, again, or spouses are the ones that have to kind of, because we tend to just, okay, boom, we're doing our thing. And when we do that and we go into work mode, the wives have to kind of pick up all the pieces and keep that all together, and keep the family together and make it seem as normal as possible for the kids. And so there's a lot, man.
Yeah, it's funny that you're talking about preparedness and having a plan. I I I haven't beat them up in that sense, but I am pretty relentless about making sure. Okay, here's what we want to do. We want to. Okay, as a Christian, I approach life with meaning and purpose derived in one area. Okay, but beyond that, I want meaning and purpose in the things that I go do, whether they're the fulfillment of my job, what I do for a living, or whatever else, right? And
Right.
so I kind of try and make sure that the family understands that from a minute perspective. So
Mm.
I'll take my daughter who's now 16 and my son is 12, my wife, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna go in this store. And oh, by the way, I want you to remember where the car's parked. You start them out early. Well, why? I'm like, well, in case something happens, we're going to come back to this car. That's our primary rally point, if you will. And that means that when you enter the store, and if you come out with your eyes full of tears or snot or blood or smoke or whatever else, and you can't see very well, are you going to go forward? Are you going to go left? Are you going to go right? And how are you going to get there? Oh, and then you progress on to other things. What's an alternate method of leaving this building? How are you going to egress if the way you came in is gone? That kind of stuff, right down to I expect for you to take the names and descriptions of 3 people that work here. A little orange apron, name, hey, my name is, a helpful smile in every aisle, whatever it is. I
Yep.
want to know that stuff. And oh, by the way, if you can't, then the next time we come to this store, you and I'll wait in the car where everybody goes and shops and has fun. So a little penalty for not doing it. But I've done those things over the years, not to make my kids paranoid, as you know, but to make them prepared. I want them to be situationally aware. I want them
Right.
to be thinking about some contingencies for how their things can go if their plans slide sideways. And my
Yep.
wife, or excuse me, my daughter got a taste of that just a few weeks ago for the first time by herself at a seedy little gas station, which appeared innocuous when she went in there. And she was able to get out of there and not get hurt or whatever else, or actually accosted, but it was coming.
Mm.
And she came home. You know how it is. Dad puts the time and energy into this stuff, and when they come home, do they sit down with Dad? No. She ran straight to my wife and told her. So
Yes.
I came in from a long day at the shop. She'd already went to bed. My wife's like, "Hey, this happened today," and she's like, "You want me to wake her up and bring her up here?" I'm like, "No, let's resist the temptation. Do that. Let it simmer. Let it settle, and I'll catch up with her when the time is right in the next 24, 48 hours." So
Right.
we did, and I'm like, "Hey, I understand you had some trouble the other night. Sounds to me like you handled things really well. Um, you knew that he was after you. You knew that he was coming for you. You knew what you needed to do to get out of there. You knew how you needed to leave. You know that you wanted to leave in a way that didn't lead him to you, wherever it is that you were going to end up or plan to end up. You did all those things well. A couple of things you might consider for next time. And oh, by the way, I love you very much, baby. Do you understand why we've talked about these things for years and why your friends tease you about me telling you, I want you to know how to get out of wherever you're at and to think of other ways. Now you understand. And she's like, yes, I do. And I knew before, but she said it really helped. And so it's interesting that you talk about that, because I think that that's one of the primary reasons when I heard about you and came across some of your content on social media. I think it was Instagram, actually. I thought, I really want to visit with this guy because, Matthew, I don't think that we're approaching these things very often the way that we should. And yes, I travel in enough circles just like you that you see a lot of things that you're unhappy with. And I don't wish for people to be paranoid, but I do want to press upon them the nature of being prepared. You operate in an area where there's a really lousy element that's very goal oriented coming through, and all the calamity that it brings with it. So would you kind of expound on that for a little while so people can understand why I just said what I said?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think all of us have a clear understanding that the world has become more and more chaotic, right? And that the criminal element, the criminal undercurrent is more and more prevalent, and they're showing themselves more and more. And evil, quite frankly, is showing itself more and more, right? And it used to be, and I can feel it even in uniform, because when I first started this job, there were bad guys. There were guys that, were trying to hurt you or kill you as a cop. But there was also a level of respect in society as a whole. And not that there's not that level of respect anymore, but there are a lot of people that just have a problem with authority, have a problem with taking direction. They want to argue every point. They want to, scream and yell and be the loudest in the room because they think that wins. And they want to be confrontational. And so I think what we see today in society, in our society, anyways, here in the US, is just a lack of boundaries and the demand to have things their way, and an emotional outburst, quite frankly. And these emotional outbursts become problematic because when those people lose control of their emotion, that's where we start to see them want to impart violence on other people, right? And as a police officer, that's definitely true. But as a normal citizen anymore, it's true, right? Where uh, when I was young, watching my grandparents, I had a single mom, so I spent a lot of time with my grandparents who were World War II vets. And let's just take a traffic infraction, right? Somebody pulls in front of somebody. Back in those days, you may have got a horn honk, and then the person would, "Hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry too. Have a good day." Not these days, right? It becomes a screaming match and can become a shooting in no time, over somebody turned in front of somebody, or somebody pulled in somebody's parking lot or parking spot. And I think, we've just reached a point in society where people resort to uh, confrontation rather than seeing the humanity in other people's and treating them accordingly. And so again, it carries over for me in uniform, because if they lack respect for normal people, they lack respect for any form of authority. They try to tie everything to some political, cause or some political agenda. Because if I believe certain things, as a Christian man, if I voice that I'm a Christian man, oh my God, you must be a Trumper, or you must be this, and it's like, no, my God is a much higher authority than any person, and my belief system is higher than any person or party or whatever. And so I know I kind of went down a rabbit hole with that answer, but I just
All
think
right.
that we're we're in a bad spot for society, right? And I think we need to get back to the human beings that we are, and how we need to interact with each other as God intended.
Well, I don't know if this will be helpful for people listening out there, or certainly the opposition, but I think that there is such a dissent from, I guess, what you and I might call or agree would be called decency. Um, that seems like that's step one. Now, I may not agree with this person that I'm, you know, diametrically opposed to, but I don't hate them.
Right.
And it seems like that's justified now. And because we have departed from decency, we approach somebody now first to see if they're just like us, and if they are, then we remain critical or snarky or whatever else, or maybe we offer acceptance. I don't know, but if they're not like us, then it is not an issue of being passive, and it's an issue of just how aggressive am I going to become. And that's the wrong direction to go. It's automatic. I mean, people are like, oh, Michael, you like guns, you kill babies. I'm like, no, dude, I don't do any of that. No, by the way, the only really loving act here is to allow somebody to defend themselves or the lives of other people, in the attempt to spare innocence, if you want to use that word.
Yeah.
And that's truly the loving act, whether you realize it or not. Nobody that I'm aware of on my side of the argument runs out there with the intent of laying waste or hurt to somebody else. They want to stop threats, and then they pivot into life-saving mode. The threat stopped. Okay, now let's call this guy in some help. Do we need to plug the holes? Are there life-saving measures that need to come online? I mean, everybody that I talk to, well, I shouldn't say everybody, most of the people I talk to fall in that category. So there's a fundamental misunderstanding about people that are like you and I, probably, but maybe time and perseverance help.
I think that would carry over for uniform, especially, right? When I wear that uniform, there's a fundamental misunderstanding that somehow I'm out looking for violence, or that I choose to impart violence on people. And that's absolutely not true. I never choose that, right? It's always the person that I'm dealing with that chooses their path, and I have to react accordingly. And so, obviously in America, the cops carry guns, and it's for a reason. It's because people are trying to hurt or kill other people, or people are trying to hurt or kill me. And I have to be able to defend myself. And that carries over for any citizen in this country, right? They have the right, God-given right, to defend their life. And, it's an important thing. And I think that part of that is understanding what it means to take another person's life. And part of that is understanding uh, the effect that you have on people. And again, it goes back to the decency conversation, right? And I consider myself a loving guy. I love other human beings. I don't care for criminals that are victimizing people. And but again, I don't hate them. I hate what they're doing, right? And I can still see. I grew up in a gang infested area. Some of my buddies that I grew up with have committed crimes on other people. I had a buddy just got out of prison for a double homicide. I don't like the idea that he killed two people, but he's still, when I look back, he's the guy that I played soccer with, that I grew up with, that we hung out and did kids stuff, right? And then as he got older, gang stuff happens, and all of a sudden, he's a convicted murderer. But that doesn't make me hate him, the person, because I still, engage with him. Still, I guess I remember him as who he was, not who he became. And then I've learned through my career and my faith that I can't hold a position of me versus them, right? Or us versus them, because that is the wrong view. We're all in this together. And a lot of times when some of the hardest gangsters I've dealt with are just broken individuals, man. They've had just a crazy rough life, and they've been dealt kind of a bad hand, and out of that, comes the criminal element, kind of slides in there. And I think, that's evil just making its way in and winning them over. But I've seen a lot of them pull out of that and come back to who they're supposed to be.
I'm glad to hear that. I know that you're right about that. It's become very posh or popular. I shouldn't say it's become. I think it's always been popular to say people don't change. And we throw that out there in conversations. I've said it, and you may have said it. I know that you've heard people that have said it. And we offer those platitudes as if they're, you know, like it's something that Socrates or Aristotle would rattle off. Therefore, it has some sort of validity. But the truth of the matter is, that isn't true. People do change. People change themselves into something better. They let go of their former selves. I mean, when I visit with my buddies about things like baptism is a fantastic example, right? So it's what would you call it, Matthew? A rebirth of oneself. So you're reborn in something bigger and better than yourself. Well, that's a huge change, maybe the very biggest one that a person could undertake. So, do I think a murderer can change? Yes. Can you change into a murderer? Yes. All these other things, but I mean, we can change, and we do change. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. So, is it one of these things where I say, "Well, I'll hate the sin, but I'll love the sinner"? Yeah, that's a tough concept to wrap your mind around, but I happen to think it's true, and I'm really glad that you brought it up like that. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so you're dealing with um, just Joe Blow criminal that you see pretty much anywhere in a Western culture, United States. But are there extra scenarios that go on in an area of the United States that you live in? Because I have the perception, you need to break this down if it's wrong. I have the perception that you're dealing with trafficking and illegals and cartels and that kind of stuff. Uh, what what is that like, and how have those things been part of your life?
Well, it's progressively gotten worse. Obviously, I mean everybody watches the news and kind of sees, and it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. There's a problem. There's some type of problem going on, right? And I can tell you, growing up here in Arizona, illegal immigration has always been a thing, right? We're butted right up against Mexico, and I can tell you my town, right? The town that I'm the chief of police in, half of the town was Mexico before the U.S. made a land purchase. And so, those international boundaries on the southern part of our nation, there's a lot of familial bonds across these imaginary lines, right, of the country. And so, as you look back, as I look back at a kid, um, there were always illegals, but it was truly people coming up for a better life, right? Or they had family here that had come up for a better life and had gotten their citizenship, and so it was kind of family helping family. And but what has happened over time is that is no longer true because we have a huge criminal element, aka the cartels, who have taken over control of that geographic area, right? So the border area itself is no longer, because it used to be I could just figure out how do I need to I know I need to go north, and I'll go through the easiest area to get across and go north into the US, and that was it. So you would have people coming from typically Mexico, sometimes Central America, coming across the border illegally, get into the U.S. A lot of times they were working and they would work seasonal and they would send the money back home and then they would go back home on holidays, and then they would come back up and work, but they lived very much under the radar, very family oriented. And when we dealt with them as police officers, especially state and locals, we don't have federal powers to enforce anything immigration wise. So when we dealt with them, always very respectful, almost to the point of like subservience, right? And because they in their country police act differently, and
Mhm.
so when they dealt with us up here, as a young cop, anyways. They were very like not look you in the eye, yes sir, no sir, answer your questions. Now, over time, what has changed is that criminal element, the cartels, has taken over, and they run that territory. So nothing moves through there. Nobody moves through there unless it has permission of that cartel, that criminal organization. And so what that has caused is they have complete control of the people moving, the dope moving, and they enforce those rules with extreme violence and prejudice against anybody who violates them. And so when you go into those, and that's both on the U.S. side and the Mexico side. Mexico is obviously a little bit worse. They've got a hell of a war going on there against these guys. But on the U.S. side, we still see it. We still see the violence. We still see the trafficking. When the last president was in office, and we had the huge just movement of people through the southern part of our country, all of those bodies were controlled by the cartels. So you could not cross into the U.S. unless you had paid taxes essentially to go across the border in those areas. And different cartels control different areas. Texas is controlled by a different cartel than Arizona. And so each one of those criminal organizations, if I was a migrant and I said, "Hey, I want to go to the US," they would be like, "Cool, that's X amount of dollars to cross you over. And if you don't pay us, we'll kill you. And if you don't have the money, we can work that out. You become an indentured slave, essentially." So females, they would get turned into sex slaves, typically working in that industry, and males would become drug mules, or they would have to they would get extorted for their money wherever they were working until they would never be able to pay off those bills because that's where the cartels work. So yeah, it has evolved quite a bit over time. The people, the migrants that are trying to come up have not changed. When we're talking about Mexico, still the same type of people. The problem became Mexico was kind of the route, right? Controlled by a criminal element that had very good control of that, still has very good control of that border. And so then what you saw was the people that had ill will against the U.S., aka jihadis, or any other terrorist organization, or any other country that is considers themselves at war with us, like China, started sending their military age males through that southern border over the last decade or so. And then, so when you were seeing the big numbers that kind of, the news kind of started showing that, hey, there's a huge amount of people shifting through the southern border into the U.S. A lot of those were not the migrants that I saw growing up. Those were military age males from countries of interest, some of our enemy countries, and it was just an influx of those. And again, we had the criminal organization running all that, and so it was and remains quite the mess.
So many things are going on in my mind. Okay, so if I watch, you can laugh me off the screen for this if I say something really dumb, but I can handle it. If I watch the movie Sicario, will I have a somewhat accurate depiction of how things go down?
So it's Hollywooded up a little bit, right? But yeah, that's some of the circumstances are definitely realistic. And actually, it's funny because that particular movie, when you see, of course, in this case, it was some federal officers and some special military teams, which still do that. But that was what my team and I at the sheriff's office, that's a lot of what we did. We were out in the deserts, middle of the night, using technology to our advantage. Specifically, the Sinaloa cartel is who we fought against because that's who controls Arizona. So a lot of the stuff that you saw in there, like those night movements and how they use tunnels and what they're doing and how they're doing it, a lot of that was pretty on point. But again, it is Hollywooded up because you gotta make it sexy.
Okay, so let me do this before we go any further. I want to
Okay.
pull this up and do this share screen, and I'll let you talk for a little bit while I do that. What was the name of the book? I wanted to pull that up and share with folks.
The book is called Interceptors: The Untold Fight Against the Mexican Cartel. And I'll give typically one of the questions about the book is why, right? Why did you write it? And there was a couple of reasons. And again, Mark Lamb being my sheriff, he had written a book, kind of a leadership book, and and then as we spent our first couple of years together, as first, him, the sheriff, and me, his second in command, I was explaining some of the history to him on the cartel stuff and some of what we've done, and he was like, "Dude, you got to write a book." And I'm like, I don't know how to write a book. I don't even know where to start. And he's like, just start one page at a time, right? And so he kept on me and told me. And one of the things that stuck with me when Mark and I were talking about this, he was like, "You understand that this is American history, right? That nobody really knows about." He says, "So it's a piece of U.S. history that happened, and nobody's talking about it. Nobody knows about it really, other than us, right?" And we think in our world, the thing that happens in the cop world is you get this to this spot where you think everybody knows and sees what you know and see,
Yes.
and then you talk to normal people and they're like, "Oh my god." And you're like, "You guys didn't know that?" Like, I thought everybody knew that. And so normal people are normal citizens are just blown away by some of the stuff, right? And so Mark kind of explained that to me. He's like, "Dude, you know how it is. They don't know what we know. They haven't seen what we see." And again, this is a piece of U.S. history here. And I worked with some absolute just American heroes, man. I got to work alongside of them, just see how they protect people, how they help people, all the stuff. And so I wanted to document that as well. And so that's kind of what drove me to start writing the book. And then I knew, the cartel was a big thing. And this book is from a snapshot in time from around the like 2008-ish time frame to about 2014, 15. That's kind of
Okay.
the snapshot you're looking at. Um, and the thing is, I knew then when I started writing the book, and it took me about 3 years to write it. So about uh, 2019 is when I started, because I had a day job, and writing a book and working was tough. But as I wrote it and as I went through that, I was going back through stories and stuff, and I would talk to guys about operations we did, and I knew writing that book that it would still be relevant. And then I thought to myself, this is going to be relevant for the next decade or two until the cartels changed somehow, because it used to be the Colombians and then it became the Mexicans that went into power. And so yeah, that's kind of the background on the book, and it starts off with me. I wanted to lay a little groundwork because obviously I'm a white guy, and I talk a lot about the Mexican culture in the book because I grew up in a gang infested neighborhood, all Hispanic for the most part. And so I grew up with Mexicans. My wife is Mexican, and her family is from the Chihuahua state. And so I have, since I've been a kid, I've been immersed in the Mexican culture. And then as I got into cop work, the same thing. And so I lay kind of the groundwork of who I am, how I grew up, how I know the stuff I know about the Mexican culture. Then I kind of lay out the cartels and how they're structured in our area and some of their belief systems, because they bastardize some of the religious beliefs and turned it into their own narco culture. I talk about some of that, and then I go into the operations themselves that we did as uh, anti-smuggling team, really out in the desert.
Okay. So I've got pulled up here. It was the One Time Nation, a good one to share for folks here.
Yeah, it cracks me up when I hear my own website, but that's my website. Kind
Okay.
of it has my background. It has some cool guy videos there, some sizzle reels to catch people's attention. But yeah, that's it there, man. And that has the book, and that has a little bit about me.
Wow.
And
Okay. So
That's Katie Pavlich there. She did my forward for me, and Katie is she's on Fox News quite a bit, and she's a friend of mine. She's an Arizona girl, so she did my forward for me as well.
fantastic. Her and Mark Lamb would both probably make good guests. We should probably reach out to those folks and see if they're interested in visiting with us. But
Absolutely.
this is really interesting stuff. I feel ignorant and silly now that I didn't read the book prior to bringing
Oh,
you
no
on, but
worries.
I'll get this bought and get this here. This looks really interesting. I didn't realize quite. I didn't realize quite what some of these stories had the potential to be like. But if you're immersed in this, and you mentioned it earlier, oh, you're talking to Mark Lamb. Well, they don't know what they don't know, and you and I dismiss that freely. But the reality is, I have that criticism of almost any um, group, organization, cultural, whatever, that immerse themselves in something,
Right.
Matthew, because the truth of the matter is we get so down and into what we're doing, and we operate in circles, whatever these circles may be, where we're often with other people like us.
Yeah.
And so, we're able to finish each other's sentences in a lot of ways, but that doesn't translate to everybody around us. It doesn't matter if it's a Second Amendment culture, a Christian culture, a law enforcement in the Southwestern United States culture. It doesn't make any difference. We know all these things are part of the lives that we live, and everybody else around us. We may not do a good job of sharing that or remembering that they don't know what they don't know. And I
Right.
think, as from a Second Amendment perspective, I run into people all the time that look at me, that like I've got a horn growing out of the middle of my head. Like Michael the Norwal. Yeah, he looks like Santa Claus, but we move past that when we hear about Second Amendment stuff. Like, that's you. That's what you do. I'm like, well, is this a problem for you? Well, yeah, kind of. And they don't know what they don't know because I haven't
Right.
taken the time to ask or to kind of decipher or share that, because I end up finding out that they have a lot of misunderstanding about what happens to be true or not true of a thing.
Right.
And,
Right.
and maybe you're finding that with your book. Has that been an experience that you've had or not?
Yeah, for sure. Because especially the funny thing is people that have known you already, but don't know you, right? And then I've heard this time and time again that from people who knew me as an acquaintance, but didn't really know me, and then they read the book and they're like, "Oh my God, man, I had no idea like you grew up like that." And because I've talked about it on other podcasts. I got shot at for the first time when I was like 12, 13, right around there, just because of the neighborhood I grew up in and how I grew up. And so, going through my background, people are like, "Dude, that's I like." I never even knew, and then looking at me, again, I'm a pretty standard white guy, and so when you start talking about the Mexican culture, the Mexican gangs, and all the stuff you've done, they're like, "Good Lord, that is quite the story," and you say, "Yeah," and the cool thing is, and again, Mark and I talked about this a lot. Everybody has a book, right? They all have lived this story, and some of it is a little more sexy than others, but nonetheless everybody has been through their struggles, everybody has done these things in their life, and that I think the book helped open that up a little bit, where people knew kind of the root of who I was, and what I really like to do, as especially in my position now as a chief. um, I I like to go places where people don't know who I am, and I just get to know them as Matt, and then we become friends as Matt Thomas and whoever, and then they start to find out all the stuff, because I think that kind of skews stuff in the beginning, right? They especially if with my title, that, oh, you're a chief, oh, and it's like, dude, and especially in the cop world, right? If I just want to hang out with some cops and talk shop, it's different when I walk up with stars on my collar than it is if I'm just one of the dudes. And so I like to go places and just be one of the dudes, and then all of a sudden they figure out, oh, you've got rank, or oh this, or oh that, and they're like, "Yeah, but you're just a normal dude." Like, yeah, we're all just normal dudes.
Well, I've been referring to you as Matthew throughout this entire discussion. Should I be calling you Matt?
Oh, it's whatever, man. I've been called way worse, so either one works for me.
Well, what's your preference?
I actually go by both.
All
Matthew
right.
or Matt. Yeah, like a lot of family and stuff. It's Matt, right? Family and friends and stuff. And
Okay.
so I answer to whatever. Matthew is obviously a little more
Okay.
formal. I had a it was funny. There was a little old black lady the other day, and she says, "Oh, your first name is Matthew," and she says, "That's biblical." And I said, "Hey, let me tell you something." I said, "I got Matthew James Thomas." I said, "My mom knew what she was doing."
Well, I ask that because it's always interesting to me when I hear people refer to me as Mike.
Right.
Especially if they're telling someone, "Oh yeah, I know Mike. I know him well." And these people kind of, it doesn't matter if there's whatever circles they are, run into them at a watering hole or through work circles, whatever else. And I'm thinking to myself, no, that person doesn't know me at all because nobody who knows me calls me Mike. I mean, if they did that in front of my mom, she'd slap the smile off their face, you know.
Oh, wow.
My,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
son's name was Michael. That's the name on his birth certificate, and that's how you'll refer to him. Okay, let's stick with
Yeah.
that. You know?
Yeah.
So,
The funny thing is that my undercover name was Mike.
no kidding. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, fantastic. I'm glad. Okay, so is it inappropriate to ask about any close calls or something that you could share with us that might be a little gripping that people could understand the weight of the kind of work that you've been doing?
Oh man. No, I don't think it's inappropriate, right? It's just because I get to choose the story. So, um, but I mean, on the sexy side of stuff, like I said, I've been shot at a few times. Um, I think it was back in 2003. I had one of the biggest shootouts we've ever had on our SWAT team, and that was a close call, and that was one of those things where we weren't sure if we had been shot. We knew we had been shot at, but sometimes you don't feel those hits if they don't hit bone and stuff. And so we were in a shooting with a guy that was barricaded, and I was on the SWAT team. I was part of the SWAT team. We had launched gas to try and get him out, and he wasn't having it and started laying down hate our way. And one of those things where we had kind of a gunfight back and forth, and then we were behind cover, my buddy and I, and um, there were several elements of our team around this property, and me and my buddy were one element of several. And after the initial volley of gunfire between us and the bad guy, we lay down and like, all right, start, any holes, any blood, any liquid
Mhm.
coming out of us that shouldn't be, and doing all that stuff, and it's a weird dynamic. And I know, guys that have been through this, military or law enforcement, they'll understand it. But it's a weird dynamic because you're kind of like, ooh, all right, let's go again. And I made it through, and you kind of, you get amped up, and so it's scary but not scary, if that makes sense. And
Mhm.
not to try and bolster myself as a badass or something, because that's not it. You're in work mode, and
Mhm.
it's part of work, and you got to get the job done. So yeah, that was one of my close calls where we had some rounds flying around us, and it actually, we were behind an AC unit, and he chewed up the AC unit a little bit because he was shooting an AK and a shotgun. And so he did a number on the roof and the AC around us, around where we were. But yeah, made it through that one. And the weird thing is, as I've talked to guys throughout the years about some of these events we've been through, and I always had a sense of it was not my time, right? And uh, even when we were in some hairy situations, I just always kind of knew, like, I'm good, because I know it's not now, right? And I don't know why I thought that, or why I believed that, but it really did help, I think, because it gives you a calmness in chaos to just kind of work through the problem. And I think a little bit of that is that young invincibility stuff going on too. But I think I had a clear understanding that a higher power knew my time, and I didn't feel like it was then.
Yeah, I think I understand kind of what you're saying. Never been in a situation like that. Not looking forward to it either. But um, there is a sense for when we become normalized to whatever it is we do. Um, and people look at us like, well, how can you do that? Or that doesn't bother you, whatever else. Like, well, no, I guess not, and it's amazing what you can get used to. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's horrible. So,
Right.
and that's part of, I'm sure. Well, I'll just ask this question. What was what were their guiding factors or motivations that made you choose law enforcement?
Oh man. So at 19, I knew got out of high school right at 18. Kind of did some community college for a little bit and trying to figure out like what am I doing, right? What am I gonna do? And I had no clue, and hadn't really planned. And all of a sudden, high school ended, and you're an adult, and like, I don't know. And so I was just working some odd jobs and doing some community college stuff, and then my mom kind of called me on it. She was like, "What are you doing? Like, what is your plan?" And I'm like, "I don't know." She's like, "Well, you need to figure it out because this is not a plan, right? This just cruising along is not a plan." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. I'm going to the Marine Corps." And so I went down and visited with the recruiter, and he told me all kinds of fantastic things. They never lie. And so he uh, he laid it all out for me, and said, "Here's what it looks like." And I was like, "All right." So I went home, told mom, "Hey, I'm going to go in the Marine Corps." And she's like, "Okay, that's a plan." And so we were getting all ready, and the recruiter and I were talking. And so at that time, the Army still had a 2-year program, right? Yeah, I think it was 2 years active and 4 years. I don't know what they call it, but you only had to do 2 active years. And so that's what I was looking for. I was like, I'm going to do 2 years, and then I'll come back. And I think I want to get into law enforcement. And at that point, I had no idea about the law enforcement piece, like what was driving me that way. Um, so go down to the Marine Corps recruiter to have our talk, and he tells me, "Yep, you're good to go. We have the 2-year program too, right?" And I'm like, "Solid. That's what I want to do." The Marine Corps did not have a 2-year program, and so when I go for my final, I'm going to go down and sign up and everything. The guy tells me like, "Hey, man, it's 4 years active," and of course, as a 19-year-old, I was like, "I'm not doing 2 extra years." I said, "You told me it was 2 years, right?" So we get in an argument. Ultimately, I tell him to go to hell, and I storm out of there, and I go home, and I tell my mom I'm not going to the Marine Corps. I said that dude was lying sack of you know what. Um, I'm not going to do that. And she's like, "Well, then what?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't want to go in the Army. I wanted to go to the Marine Corps because I had seen the commercials. They had got me right. They had got my heart.
Yeah.
Seeing all the cool guys stuff. So I kind of floated a little bit. Again, I was kind of just, what am I going to do? And I knew, so some capacity, I knew I wanted to serve. Right, the Marine Corps thing was big. I wanted to be part of that. I want to be part of something bigger. And the Marine Corps looked cool. Those dress blues, I think they get you with those. And
Yeah.
so all that
These,
stuff.
these
And
these dudes are carrying around swords. The only
right,
thing,
yeah,
the only thing that could make it cooler is if they were like lightsabers from Star Wars.
right, right,
There would be a line around the block to become a Marine if they
yeah.
somehow implemented lightsabers. But anyway, go ahead.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And they, the few, the proud, and I'm like, I want to be the few. I want to be the proud. And so I knew, out of that interaction, I was like, I'm not doing that, because it was a big deal that the guy had lied to me in my mind. And so I started looking. I'm like, well, I can still serve here. I can be a cop, right? But I was too young. I was only 19, and so I figured, well, I'll go to work in some capacity for one of the cop shops. So I started applying, and Pinal County was actually the first one to call me after applying, and they said, "Hey, we want you to come test." And so I went out and did all the tests, and I got a call from them. They said, "We want to hire you." And so I was 20 years old when I took the job, and got hired, and that was it, man. I had been there since, and so to back to the base of your original question, I think it was just a drive to serve and be a part of something bigger. And um, because I had grown up in a gang neighborhood, right? And that, I think that kind of, it's that that's kind of a wacky brotherhood, but it's a brotherhood, right? It's that
Yeah.
brotherhood, it's that togetherness, all of that stuff, I think, was appealing to me.
Well, when you see those things and you're in that culture, you see that brotherhood is necessary to live. Now, wisely chosen and purposefully chosen brotherhoods are best.
Right.
But sometimes you end up in a brotherhood because you need brotherhood one way or the other, whether it's, bad brothers, good brothers, or some point in between.
Yeah.
Brotherhood's important. I believe me. I participate in a men's ministry. People need people like them to talk about. I mean, my wife and I have had these discussions. She's like, initially anyway, she's like, why do you like this men's ministry so much? I'm like, well, sweetheart, as you know, because she's far smarter than I am. I said, I'm ignorant and silly. You got to give me that. So I said, that said, there are things that guys think about, act on, don't act on, whatever else, that don't necessarily translate to wives.
Right.
And the same is true with women. I mean, there's some guy that wrote a book, Women Venus, Men Mars, whatever it may be. I don't even remember. But I haven't read the book. But what I'm saying is the title itself lends some credibility because we're not the same. So you kind of need guys you can bounce stuff off of and that can understand that humor and those urges, problems, all those other things. The same thing for chicks. They need that. And so it's not that I wouldn't tell my wife everything, but I choose not to because I may need to share that over here instead.
Right.
Brotherhoods serve lots and lots of purposes. It can't be denied. And that doesn't just mean in regard to the sexes only. I'm not saying that. But brotherhood itself, that's huge. So I can see as a young man how growing up in that you'd say, it's natural for me to be part of a brotherhood. I don't know if you actually voiced that or not at the time, but it was probably self-evident from the way that you're speaking.
Yeah, no, and I didn't see it at the time. I just, and some of it was driven, quite frankly, because at 19, I was also faced with what I didn't include in that decision-making process is my wife, then girlfriend, was pregnant. So at 19, she's pregnant. And so that prompted a lot of my decision making too, because I was also looking at, I need a government job, right? I'm not trying to get rich. I just want to take care of my family. And, I knew good health care, good steady pay, all that stuff. And so that was a contributing factor as well. So I had the part of wanting to be part of something bigger, wanting to serve in some capacity, that filled that void. And then also, I needed to take care of my then girlfriend, soon to be wife, and this kid that this kid was having. And so we were both kids having a kid, and we had to figure it out quick. And so that played into the whole thing as well.
So you made this decision to enter law enforcement. You progressed up through the ranks with what appears to be speed and some level of ease, and now you're out there. As I said, moving up, moving through. Did you get to a point where you look around and you're standing there, and you're like, that's a shot caller. This guy isn't working for the cartel. This guy is the cartel. I mean, do you have those experiences or is that actually happening in and around you?
No, you have those experiences. I mean, I had that experience in my family on the in-law side, right? Because some of her family was connected. So it was funny, we kind of jokingly call it green zones, where family get-togethers, there would be shot callers at those. And, we both knew who we were. I knew what side I was on. They knew what side they were on, but it became this, because the odd thing is, as violent and as vile as the cartels are, the family thing is still a big deal, right? And so family get-togethers were kind of a King's X. Nobody goes to guns or anything. We do the family thing, and it's a green zone. And then once you're done with that, it's back to business, right? And so I had that dynamic going on. And then I had, of course, when I was out in the field doing the work, there were several times where you're dealing with people that are, and the only thing I can liken it to is sports, right? And so street level, you're dealing with, like high school players and some maybe D2 players. And then all of a sudden you see an NFL guy and you're like, that guy's different, right? And you can see it, you can feel it. They carry themselves different. Everything is different about them. And so you definitely, you take notice. And of course, we're like, my whole life has been observing people, right? Observing behaviors and watching people and learning who I'm dealing with. And so it becomes easier with time to do that type of stuff. And then I've told my wife a couple of times, when I've dealt with certain people, there were some that you could feel the pure evil. And I don't know how to explain it. Like, they weren't doing anything. It was just, I knew when I looked this guy in the eyes that I was looking at pure evil.
Mhm.
And you know, and you can feel it down to your core, like this dude's different.
I've had guests on. We have had people on Warrior Wednesday who have talked about that exact thing. It's come up in these circles enough times now that it's it's obvious that people have had those experiences. Now, you started out this portion of the conversation by basically illustrating, hey, there are times when we walk on the field and things change, and then we walk off the field and they're a little different. And people recognize that, and there may be even a shared respect for on the field action versus off the field.
Right.
I think people can wrap their minds around that. And then
Yeah.
you run across somebody that's like, they're not concerned about off the field and off the field. They have things that they're going to do, and you won't be an impediment to them. So if you do make yourself an impediment, then you better be prepared for the natural things that come next. And that's huge when you're talking about life and death. It's not quite as tough when you're talking about boardroom negotiations.
Right.
But when you're talking about, like you say, going to guns and all the other things associated with it, no, by the way, it isn't just you that's affected anymore. That's as heavy as life gets.
Right. Right. Yeah. And again, the worst of the worst that I've dealt with, you're absolutely right. There is no playing field for them. They consider the world their playing field, right? And there's no timeouts, there's no stopping, none of that. It's all the time, and they're always on, and they're playing a different game. And again, you can recognize it, you can feel it, you can see it. The cool thing is, uh, when to me, that is the ultimate game for me, right? Because and that's why I loved Undercover, because I'm playing with I'm betting my life on this game, right? Essentially. So
Mhm.
when you jump into Undercover and you're dealing with high level guys, you are betting your life that you're going to be better than they are in this game that you're playing. And when you get to finish a case and put the cuffs on somebody, you're like, yeah, I won. And I'm a hunter too. So it's that whole, it's just winning the game.
Mhm.
And I think that is a big motivating and driving factor as I went through my career was I always wanted to win, and I was driven by that.
So I'm on OneTimeNation.com, which is your site where you can pick this stuff up. And I'm making arrangements here to buy this book. I want a signed book. I think that'll be fantastic. I really want to read this. I really appreciate you coming on and visit with about it. So should I be buying the hardback or the paperback? I never can tell. I have both on my library, of course.
That is totally your call. The only difference between the hardback and paperback is the hardback. The cover is a little bit different because it wraps around on the inside, and you get a
Yeah.
little bit extra stuff because I threw in a little bit extra on the interior.
You know what? I may flip a coin on that. When you're handling them, there's some people have real preferences. Oh, I prefer
Yeah,
a paperback so I can take it with me and go places and do things. Hardback doesn't lend itself to that for me. I don't care about that. I've got both, so I'll flip a coin on that. But for those
yep,
people interested, OneTimeNation.com, you can get apparently author signed books, which is what I'm going to say. I appreciate that. This is going to be fantastic. What else should we know? Okay, two things in parting. What should we know about Matthew? What should we know about Matthew Thomas that we don't know?
Hmm.
And what parting advice would you give us for living in the world without being worldly? So, what do you say to the first one? What should we know about Matthew Thomas we don't?
Oh man, I think the biggest thing to know about Matthew Thomas that you probably don't is uh, just the fact that well, I kind of said it, but that I'm just a normal guy, right? My career doesn't define who I am. My title doesn't define who I am. I am a father, a husband, a grandparent, a son, just a normal dude. And I think that the funny thing is, I may have a certain look because I have people tell my wife this all the time. He's such a badass and he looks so mean. And I'm like, how do I look mean? I don't feel like I look mean. And I don't feel like I'm mean to people. And so I guess that's it. That Matt's just I'm a normal dude. I consider myself a nice guy. I have learned through my faith to re-engage humans and the humanity, and I serve in my children's ministry at church. And so the funny thing is, some people know that as a cop, I can get going with my mouth sometimes and sound like a sailor. And then you turn around and you tell people that you serve in children's ministry, and they're like, "What the hell? Like, how do you do that?" So yeah, that's a little bit, I guess, of the behind the scenes of who Matt is.
Well, people take on these personas. I know that, I mean, you've done UC work. You're very cognizant of what things appear the way they are, what things appear the way they aren't. But when I go through with my kids, Colonel Cooper's the code list of what is it, that white, yellow, orange, red?
Yeah.
What do they call that? The codes of awareness or whatever.
Right.
I assure you that my daughter, if she and I were sitting on a park bench watching people walk by, she would not categorize you as white level. She would say, definitely yellow, definitely yellow. And then the next question I would ask her, I'm like, what do you think? And she would say, military or cop, gotta be,
Yeah,
So
I definitely do get that. And then the haircut is a little bit long for me, but I'm gonna go get cut today. And so when I'm high and tight, people are definitely, and I consider it a compliment, but a lot of people didn't because of the haircut, and I guess the way I carry myself. But a lot of people are, Marine? And I'm like, no, I'm a cop. And they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. I was gonna say you're sporting an afro compared to some guys like you. So we'll get her shaved down good here later today.
Yeah.
All right. So what about the last question? Go ahead with that.
Oh, give me the last question. I'm sorry. What was the
Okay,
second
so
one?
I think I asked. I wanted to know about something about Matthew Thomas that we don't know, and then essentially I was driving at what should we know about navigating this world? I mean,
Oh man.
what parting reflection would you have for us? That's something we can be thinking about.
Well, I think kind of to bring it full circle back to what we were talking about in the beginning. I think how you navigate this world is you start looking at people as other human beings and understanding that everybody has their story. Everybody has something going on, right? We all have some type of struggle that we're dealing with, and just have a little more grace for your fellow humans, and stop looking at them as a certain thing, whether it be a race or whether it be a political party or a religion, and start looking at each other as humans. And I think the world would be a lot better.
I like that. I really do. I appreciate that. Matthew Thomas, everybody. You spend all of your time in Arizona or most of it?
Yeah, all my time here. I'm born and raised, and so I've been here for 53 years now. There's not many of us. We're getting invaded by California right now. So,
well, they've got problems. Many of those people are leaving. I can understand why. So, we'll wish them the best on that, because I know that I plan to wrap up, but the truth of the matter is, I tend to chase rabbits often, and I think that it bears it just for a minute discussing for just a second, because I have a lot of people that live in this insulated area between two rivers called Iowa, and they don't know much about what's going on to the east or the west of them. And they look at Californians, they look at New Yorkers, they look across the river into Illinois and seeing those things. They're like, why don't they just leave? I'm like, no, hold on a minute, dude, hold on. If the way of life that you had come to enjoy, as let's say you're a second or third or maybe even a fourth generation, whatever, Arizona, California, whatever, if the way of life, if your state essentially walked away from you, how easy would it be for you to embrace the idea, I'm going to give up the only thing that I've ever known, where my provenance is associated, where my lineage, my heritage is, I'm going to give that up and leave because somebody else spoiled the place. That's a very hard thing to ask those people to do. So when folks in Iowa say, wow, that's California, you write them off. I'm like, no, dude, that can happen anywhere. And so the question isn't, should you pick up stakes and leave? The question is what can you do about it? Oh, by the way, have a little compassion. What can you do to help those people? Because they would appreciate your help. So
sure.
I understand you've got elements that you're dealing with that are foreign or not welcome in some fashion. But the truth of the matter is, there's a reason for that. So we probably would be wise to ask why that is, and
Yeah.
maybe what impact we could make on that ourselves.
Yeah, and that is the funny thing is that we joke about it in Arizona, but realistically, like I've got some great neighbors that have moved over from Cali, and they all have their reasons as to why they're moving. Some of them are running from just the way the state is run. Some of them are coming here just purely out of work purposes or whatever. But our state, I think the thing I love about Arizona is we've always been very very diverse, right? And in that diversity. Um, it's a melting pot. You don't see there's not a lot of segregation. Though we kind of doesn't matter the color, the country, none of that. We just kind of all mix together, and everybody's cool with that. And I really like that.
Fantastic. Matthew Thomas, thank you for spending time with us this morning.
Yes, sir.
OneTimeNation.com is the site. You can go there and learn a little bit, pick up a book. I've got mine in the cart. I'll have it on the way to me. Within seconds of finishing this up. That'll be great. As always, visit iowafc.org. We need your membership. We need your engagement. Check out our trusted partners. Use them, buy from them. And oh, by the way, if you get the opportunity, thank them, because they're making a gesture to you when they're not obligated in any way. So take a moment and thank them for that. We really appreciate it. Again, Matthew Thomas, I sense that our conversation truly isn't over. Maybe you'd be willing to come back for another conversation someday.
Oh, absolutely, man. Anytime. This has been great.
Fair enough. Off we go. IFC here with Warrior Wednesday, and Matthew Thomas, thank you again. Take care, guys.
Sure.